Hey, beautiful, wonderful fragrance lovers. Welcome to my channel here at the Scentadar Fragrance Channel. Come on down, sit down, grab a drink, grab some popcorn. Today we're going to have a big old fragrance chat. I hope that y'all enjoy these videos where we just open a big discussion where we actually chat with each other and have a heart-to-heart about some big fragrance topics and sometimes big fragrance issues that can arise into the fragrance community or just into the fragrance world in general. Today, y'all saw the title down below. Y'all know what you clicked on. It's all about, do fragrances really get old? Do fragrances get discontinued? And do they ever become vintage smelling? Do they ever truly get outdated? We're not really talking about fragrances getting expired or actually going bad. We're just talking about, do fragrances actually, style wise, or do people feel like they're not wearable because, they're from a different time, a different place, a different era? Let's talk about that today. This idea was kind of inspired by, there's been kind of in the fragrance community, I guess in general, there's been a lot of popularity, or there's been a resurfacing of people respecting fragrances like Dior Fahrenheit, which is an amazing fragrance. It smells, it is violet-like, it is petrol or gasoline-like. It's a little bit leathery. Almost has this almost like spicy, almost quality about it. It has a vibrancy and almost like a heat behind it, like a fire. It's a fragrance with a lot of magnetism and a lot of energy behind it, but because it was made, decades ago, is it a fragrance that maybe smells dated? That's the big discussion today. Are fragrances like that, do they become dated? Now, I want to get your opinion. Please in the comment section, let me know. But I'm going to suggest that fragrances really don't ever become dated. Now, this might be an unpopular opinion, and I often put my opinions out there and let y'all know that they truly are just opinions. But why do fragrances feel outdated? Do we really limit ourselves to a certain era? Do we limit ourselves to a certain frame of mind? When, we do connect fragrances with memories, and often a lot of people are connected with fragrances, to certain memories, maybe in the past, and maybe certain fragrances are iconic and considered with, certain times in the world and certain places, and, Shalimar connected to the flappers and, rebellious and freedom of women and those kinds of things. But do we limit ourselves in the modern time to those fragrances and maybe just put them on the shelf and just smell them every once in a while, or don't even own them in general just because they have a different style? I would propose that fragrances never truly become outdated, and it's all up to you if you want to feel like if that fragrance even is from the 60s or the 70s or the 80s or whatever, whenever it was made. Um, I, for me, where I live out in the world, a lot of people don't know much about perfumery. Not a lot of people have any experience with perfumery, and people even into the fragrance world who are into the fragrance game, who love fragrances, don't know a lot about history. So if you were to let them smell a Chypre or an older Fougere fragrance, they might not necessarily connect it with an older time unless, somebody gave them that preconceived notion. So this is a really something I want to bring to the fragrance community. I want a lot of people to actually go on the streets and let people smell some of these vintage fragrances. There's no dispute that some notes, sometimes lavender, sometimes yellow aldehydes, like in Chanel number 5, sometimes, oak moss and lavender, and again, aldehydes and sometimes even animalic notes in general can smell a little bit more vintage of a style. But even if it can smell that way, is that a negative? And do people even pick that up on? I know people around here, if you wore something vintage inspired or, vintage leaning, people really wouldn't know that it was made in the past. They would just think it's an interesting smell. The average person just doesn't have those kinds of notions. And I think that maybe as a fragrance world, that maybe we need to start leaning in that way where we're more accepting and more open to anybody wearing anything. I think a lot of us are limiting ourselves, in experiencing older fougères, oak moss heavy fragrances. Of course, with Ifra, it's harder to find those fragrances, but there are wonderful brands like Rogue Perfumery and other indie brands that are really, not limited and not connected to Ifra or Firmenich, and they're doing their own thing. So there are ways to get your hands on fragrances that have the real deal notes, and even buying the vintage, the older fragrances. But the accessibility is one issue, and also, again, how do people feel about it? I would love to know your thoughts. For me personally, I love Platinum Egoist. I love Anateus. I probably am going to buy a bottle sometime in the near future of Anateus. I think it's a wonderful fragrance. I don't think it's dated at all. People are still wearing Fahrenheit. People love Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit's an amazing creation and deserves the talk and deserves the attention. I did have a couple fragrances I want to mention here and maybe give you some food for thought with this topic and with this discussion. So let me know, do you think Aqua di Gio, the original EDT, do you think it's outdated? Do you think people can wear it in 2020? And let me know. It's still a fresh, almost salty, floral, aquatic fragrance. Very good creation. One of the biggest top sellers of all time. I've always thought that this fragrance had a little bit of almost like a vinegar-like smell in the dry down, but there's no doubt that it's mass appealing. It gets compliments, and this still can get you compliments and still smells great here in 2020. Are there other fragrances? Of course, the Anateus that I mentioned that maybe are a little bit more like a fougere, a little bit animalic. Is this a fragrance that runs you away? Is this fragrance too old school, too masculine, too macho? Is this a fragrance that you feel like a modern man can't wear? This fragrance is really nice and is excellent quality. Chanel, even the modern formulations of Anateus, excellent creations, and I think that are definitely worth wearing, for a rugged, maybe an individualistic kind of man. So let me know. Do you think that Anateus, I'm just giving y'all some food for thought. Of course, feel free to mention other fragrances in the comment section below. What about this one? What about Hubagant? I believe it is called Fougere Royale. What about this one? I think this is what considered one of the earliest, or maybe this is, I think it's considered the first documented, actually where they actually sat down and wrote the formula of the fragrance down. There might have been Fougeres before this one, but this was the first one that was actually sold commercially, as far as I know, and where they actually wrote down the fragrance, and it's still being recreated and remade here today. So really, really nice oak moss, fresh, lemony fragrance, very crisp. And does this smell vintage to you? Does this smell outdated? Let me know. There was a while where you could find these for extremely good prices, but I think the supply's dried up on these. This being a cheapie, now you have to pay the real price for it. So, anyways, let me know, my friends. What do you think about this topic? For me, fragrances never truly become outdated. Some people, there are, maybe the majority of fragrance lovers will move from the new trendy fragrance to trendy fragrance. Maybe they'll forget about certain fragrances and not wear them anymore because they feel like they defined a decade, they defined a people, and maybe a generation. But when I look at fragrance like I look at music, I don't like to define it by a time period. It's nice that it's connected with time. It's nice that, maybe the fragrance was connected to Woodstock. Maybe it was connected to classical, Mozart. Maybe the fragrance is connected to a certain time and place, but is it limited by that? I don't think that fragrance is limited. I think that fragrance is all about what you love and what you want to wear. So that's what I'm going to suggest today. Wear what you love and rock what you got, no matter what it is. Wear a fragrance that truly defines you. Don't be afraid of a vintage fragrance if you're a younger guy, or even if you're a more mature individual. If you love that fragrance, don't feel guilty wearing a fragrance that's more classically inspired. You might just get some positive attentions, and some of them smell great. If you're a gentleman out there wearing, Hubagants, Fougere Royale, this stuff is classy and clean and fresh and crisp and citrusy. I don't think that anybody should be saying that this smells outdated. It truly doesn't. I don't think Aqua di Gio smells outdated. I think that maybe there are other modern alternatives for a younger man, but does it smell actually outdated? No, you could still wear this in 2020, get lots of compliments, get lots of attention, and you'd smell great with Aqua di Gio, the original EDT, and even my beloved, one of my favorites, Anateus by Chanel. So, anyways, I'll let you go, my friends. Wear what you love. Let me know again what you think about this topic in the comment section below. Let's get that conversation started. And I'll see you next time, my friends. I hope that I'm being a good influence. I'm being a good voice in the fragrance community. I hope that I'm maybe changing things in a positive direction. And I'll see you next time, my friends. Like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And bye.